Welcome back, everybody. In this episode, we're talking about Hajime No Ippo, The Fighting, an import boxing game for the GBA that's based on the popular Japanese manga and anime of the same name. There are two reasons that I chose to review this game. First off, I started watching the anime and I really enjoyed it. Secondly, I saw the developer and it piqued my interest. This game is made by Treasure, the famed Japanese game company responsible for titles like Guardian Heroes, Ikaruga, and Gunstar Heroes, just to name a few. Now, this is far from the only game based on the series, but as far as I'm concerned, it's by far the best. Some of the other games in the series have come to the US under the Victorious Boxer name, but none of them can hold a candle to this one. Since this is an import, getting started with the game can seem daunting, but don't be intimidated. The initial menu is all you really need to worry about, and though it may look intimidating at first, it's really not all that bad. I'll translate all the Japanese into English for you here, so that you can easily tell what does what. It's all pretty much what you'd expect. Basically, story mode is where you want to be. It takes you through the opponents from the anime and manga in chronological order. This is awesome because it kinda lets you play through the show and all the characters fight with their signature moves, but if you haven't seen the show, then it's kinda spoilery to know all the opponents and their exact order. So if you plan on watching the show, I suggest you do that first. Once you've mastered the story mode, the only other mode that might keep you interested is tournament mode, which adds some extra playtime by letting you use your custom boxers and all that stuff. I never got to try the versus mode since my friends have somewhere around zero interest in an import boxing game for the Game Boy, but I assume it's not much different than the main game. Like most handheld boxing games, Hajime no Ippo basically copies Punch-Out hook, line, and sinker. Unlike those clones though, it does it well and adds new stuff into the mix at the same time. For example, on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a small gauge that shows your distance from the opponent. You're able to move toward or away from the opponent, which adds a layer of strategy because some punches can only be thrown from certain ranges. That being said, the game is much more complicated than Punch-Out. Moving adds some complexity, but the controls are a bit tougher too. Basically, up and punch is an uppercut, just punch is a jab, and down with punch is a body blow. Once you start adding in hooks and combinations, super punches, it really starts to get complicated. Blocking, on the other hand, is easy, and it's a good thing too, because the computer doesn't telegraph its moves as much as in Punch-Out, and it's much faster as well. To block, all you have to do is, well, nothing. You're basically blocking anytime you're not punching, but that doesn't let you totally off the hook, because similar to Punch-Out's heart system, getting hit in the gloves too many times will cause your guard to break, and then you're extremely vulnerable to attack. The best thing to do is switch between defense and offense fairly evenly so that you never take too much damage, but you also never lose the ability to guard. It's a tough balance, but it's very rewarding when you do it right. In between rounds, you can get a pick-me-up from your coach that gives you some sort of bonus like raising your health or adding to your special meter, similar to the way that Punch-Out lets you regain some health between rounds. This game gives you a certain amount of each recovery item based on which fight you're on, and in most of the later matches, I needed all of them in order to win. The reason for this is simple. The AI in this game is brutal. Beating each boxer takes good timing and a bit of practice. Learning how to combo and use your special punches at the right time is essential to winning. The problem with this is that there are no English instructions to teach you how to play. Luckily, some kind soul has made a guide to the game over at GameFAQs that's far more in-depth on the controls and gameplay than I have time to talk about here. It is possible to learn the controls without the guide via trial and error, but it's much harder and you'll get beaten down a lot on the way. Plus, the guide is free, so you might as well make it easy on yourself. The game's hard enough already. Graphically, the game is very faithful to the show. All the characters look just like their anime counterpart, and the overall look of the game is very good. The sound is equally spot on. You can easily tell when a punch connects or misses based totally on the sound, and the sound of the strikes are very satisfying when they connect. The music is definitely not the game's strong suit, but it's good enough. There aren't many songs, but what's there is fine, and it doesn't really get in the way of you hearing the audio cues for your punches, so it'll do. Let's just say that it's definitely not up to Punch-Out's level in the music area, but it's not annoying either. So what's the verdict? Well, If you're a fan of the anime, then the Japanese text shouldn't be too bad since you mostly already know what's going on. But even if you've never seen the show before, it's pretty easy to get into since it's a boxing game and it doesn't really overwhelm you with text. I think it's very import-friendly. Japanese text aside though, I think this is the best Punch-Out knockoff to date. Games like Wade Hickston's Counterpunch or Animal Boxing always feel less than when compared to Punch-Out, but Hajime no Ippo feels like an offshoot that changes the formula a bit and appeals to a more hardcore audience. It may not be for everyone, but if you're looking for a Punch-Out game with some challenge, I think this is your best bet. Oh, one last thing I want to warn you about is that this game should not be confused with the DS game of the same name. That game was made almost 6 full years later by a completely different team, and while it's kind of fun and it does stick more closely to the anime with the training minigames and stuff, it's not nearly as good as the GBA game. You should also know that there's a PSP game with a very similar title called Hajime no Ippo The Fighting Victorious Spirit, which is totally different from both the DS and the GBA game. I've yet to play the PSP version, so I can't really comment on it other than to say that it's not the game I'm reviewing here, despite the naming similarity. Well, that wraps up another episode. Thanks as always for joining me, and if you're not watching this on RetroWare TV, then what's wrong with you? Get over there and check it out, plus all the other great stuff that the guys are making. You won't be disappointed. Also, on a totally random note, people are always emailing me asking when the next show will be out, so I decided rather than answer all of that email, I just set up a Twitter account, so you can get the show updates and general musings from me at twitter.com/VGTO. Thanks as always for watching, and until next time, have a great week.